Is that Vellum? Yes, it is the Vellum cardstock. I'll show it to you in a minute. We had a huge rainstorm last night. I mean, like a massive thunderstorm. It was nice. Didn't have any damage. We did get a lot of rain. Filled the pool up because Rainbow Stamper was doing 8,000 cannonballs the other day. So that was kind of helpful. And we have very overcast weather today. It is so humid. I mean, it might as well be raining because you can feel just the wetness in the air. It's insane. But it's a good day for crafting. And also I want to say, I'm really enjoying the fact that Rainbow Stamper's at Vacation Bible School because I can craft and I don't feel guilty about the fact that he's not doing anything. So this is like such the perfect week. I'm so happy about that. Okay, so let me put this here so I can see. You know what I might do is I might move, because I was doing this yesterday and I think it worked out better. I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to move my iPad because that way I can actually see the comments when people leave them. So that kind of works out a little bit nicer. There we go. Cindy, I see Cindy. Okay, so this is the piece from yesterday. It is a little bit curled, but I was able to, first of all, I smeared the ink around with the alcohol, which worked out really well. And you can tell the difference of the sides because this side you can see the glimmer, whereas this side it's very muted. You could use either one. But I spread the alcohol around, which if you remember, I should have taken a picture of it. It was still in the zigzag, so it did spread, even though I played with this last night it was probably 6:30. So, oh, that's a laminator. I'm wondering if a laminator would melt it. Yours is a cool laminate. Okay, I don't have a laminator. An iron. You know what? I wonder if, just for the sake of doing it, I'm going to do one thing real quick. I'm going to put this through, because I have it right next to me and I have a piece of scrap. I'm just going to put this through my die cut machine with a piece of scrap paper. And we'll just see, because that might be just enough anyway. So, I don't know if this is going to fit or not. Let me cut this. Do the fast cut. Cut that in half. So, I'm just going to put it through just to kind of give it something to mush it with. Let's try it. We'll see if this works. Since you mentioned it. All right. I just happen to have my magnetic plate because that's the one I use most often. Oh, sorry, buddy. Didn't mean to frighten you. Okay, so I went back and forth. It kind of flattened it a little bit, just a smidge. But what I'm gonna show you is when you glue this down, if you do use a good amount of glue, and I'm gonna put it onto a piece of white just so you can see it better, because I really don't know what I'm gonna do with it yet. I feel like this probably was just a little bit bigger. Let's see. I'm going to flip it to cut it. I'm going to go with 5 1/4 approximately. by 4. Okay. Let me make sure this one. 4 by 5 1/4. Okay. So just for this one, what I'm going to do, and I want to grab my silicone mat because that makes it super helpful, because then you can kind of go to the end. Because I did see Patty Bennett did a really great video where I got actually a lot of the tips with the splattering. And when you put the Stampin' Seal Plus and you put it all the way to the edge, even if you miss the edge, you can kind of roll it over a little bit. So let me just try this. Because the Stampin' Seal Plus is kind of like, it's not really like a regular tape runner, in my opinion anyway. Because the tape is super, super heavy duty. And it has like a little bit of a texture to it, if that makes sense. And also with the vellum, since it's got so much going on the front, you really won't see the adhesive behind it. Okay, so I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to try to kind of start at one corner and see if I can kind of follow along. So considering, I mean, it still does have a teeny bit of a curl to it. It's pretty good. I probably could trim it just a little bit down now that it's on here. But it does look pretty good. I should have put some in the center and I completely omitted that. But that's not too modeled considering. Now, we'll take this once more. So just like a couple little tips and we will run this through. I'm just going to go back and forth with a pass. And I think one other thing is that it really makes the color pop if you mount it onto white. So, and also I did pick some unusual colors. So that is pretty flat, actually. The only thing I had to do is I have a little overhang here, so I'd probably trim this down just a smidge. And I should have put it underneath, but that's pretty flat considering. So there is that one. We could always use that. If I trim this down, which I'm not going to use my regular trimmer, only because with the two pieces, it would be a teeny bit hard on the blade. So I'm going to just trim this just a little bit with my guillotine trimmer. Maybe go down to 5. 3 3/4 by 5. And this is probably why, just because where I am at the end, I should have put a little bit of adhesive in the middle, but that looks pretty good. Definitely should have put adhesive in the middle. It would have held it down a little bit better. So there is that one, at least. So we do have one from yesterday, okay? So what I'm going to do is just pop this over here. So I have some, this one's obviously much bigger. We're going to start with a bigger piece. I have some vellum. So this is just regular vellum. In case you've never seen it, it does come 8.5 by 11. I think you get 10 pieces, no, 20 pieces. So that's pretty good. So 20 pieces of 8.5 by 11. It is 101856. That's the order number right down here. Okay. Our vellum is not super heavyweight. And the reason I will tell you is because I did purchase some vellum once before that was a little bit heavier because I've always wanted to make a card from vellum. And ours isn't really sturdy enough that you could make it by itself because it is kind of wobble. So that's something we can work on eventually. So I'm going to take dark Bermuda Bay, dark Pool Party. What's else kind of a little bit watery looking? Let's see. Dark Seaside Spray. Oh, gosh, that one's retired, isn't it? Wah. I feel like Night of Navy is going to just be entirely too dark altogether. What was this one? Light Night of Navy? Somehow got whacked up in there. Let's see. What else do we have over here? Dark Balmy Blue. I must have had that one mixed up with something else. Light Balmy Blue. Okay. And I want like a little bit of green in there. So I think I'm going to do just jade. What's this one? This probably would be nice too. Call Me Clover might have been. I'm going to just do a little bit of Call Me Clover. I know it's retired, so you can't get it anymore, but maybe you still have it. So just for a little bit of green. So I'm going to take the brush tip end of my Stampin' Blends and just add some color. Don't really want it to have a pattern. You kind of just want it to be willy-nilly. Okay, and what was this one? Seaside Spray. Some of these, and the reason you want to use dark is because a lot of them, depending on the lightness of the color, still really won't give you a hugely dark color impression. I might actually bring in some Misty Moonlight. So this was Call Me Clover. Just for like a, I don't know, something. And what is this one? Pretty Peacock. Oh, that's another one that's retired. I love this color though. Put a little bit of that in there. So maybe you have some of these, maybe you don't. Just, you know, go with what you have if you don't. So I have one of these that has nothing in it, which I believe is this one. So this is my Wink of Stella. And I'm gonna just make sure this is, yeah, this is the empty one. So I'm gonna take my alcohol, and I do have my paper towel here. So I have my alcohol, so I'm just dipping in, and I'm gonna go with the darkest color first, which I think we said was Pretty Peacock. And kind of just spreading it around. Some of it, I guess, depending on like the newness of your marker and also how recently you put the ink, because I will say that the ink did spread super well. There it is. Super well the wetter the brush is, which I know that might sound a little weird, but again, I don't want to mix colors, so I'm trying to make sure that I clean my brush off before I go from one to the other. But you have to make sure that you have enough alcohol that it's basically helping the alcohol marker to move. And what I may do, and I might try this with one of my, you know what I probably should have put in here was a little bit of orange. Let me, just before I finish, let me see, dark Calypso coral. Yeah, I'm going to put a little bit of this in here just for like a little bit of kind of orange or orangish pinkish color would be nice. I might try actually, and I don't know if this is something that would or wouldn't work, so I have to see. But I might try seeing if you were to dip one of your alcohol markers and try this. I wonder, I wouldn't want to do it with one that is like a newer color that I have, because I kind of would want it to be able to not ruin one of my newer ones, but I have a lot of colors. Obviously, if I'm pulling out some of the ones that are retired. And the kind of cool thing about this is, so what you can do if you need to, if you're trying to keep it flatter, is use like the cap of your pen and hold your paper down, which kind of also will help to keep the flatness of the whole situation. But it kind of will bring your colors so they merge together. So in case you may not have an aqua painter, you can just use an empty, that's why I'm using this Wink of Stella. You could definitely use an aqua painter or a water pencil, whatever it is we're calling it these days. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, let me go over here just a smidge and spread that just a little. I want this just to, got a weird color over here because the orange and the green mixed, it made kind of like a brown spot. So that's one thing you want to be careful, but I'm just going to lightly blow on this. Oh, the alcohol with a spritzer. I have seen that too. Because since it's alcohol, it will dry pretty quickly. Especially because it's that 91%, it does dry a little bit quicker. So you have that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cap on my Wink of Stella because I'm actually going to use this one, which has, whoops, Wink of Stella in it. And I'm going to spritz it. I'm going to squeeze this out. Let me see if I can make this. Maybe this wasn't the one that had it in it either. Could have been. Hold on, I got another one. This is probably one of my favorite things to have, the Wink of Stella, so I always have a bazillion of these. Other thing you can do, again, this was another tip from Patty, is once you hit a dry spot, you could put your blocks to kind of keep it flat a little bit, so that way you can splatter a little bit more effectively. Oh my goodness, I hit the dead end with all of these. What I need to do is start putting a black line on them so I know that here's a brand new one. So we got plenty on this one. In case you've never seen a Wink of Stella pen, this is a brand new one. It has a black spot in the middle. So you pull the cap off, you unscrew it, and then you actually remove this little piece here. And then when you put this in, it will puncture so the ink actually flows. So I do like to, let me put the cap on it. I do like to shake it up really well first. Just mix the shimmer. And even though this pen was empty that I painted with, it still is shimmery. So let's squeeze. You have to squeeze to get it to come through. See what it looks like that. So I want to pick this up. And you kind of want it, not sopping, but depending on what you want. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to put this here so I know that's a new one. Now the other thing you can do, I'm just going to use this with the bigger tip just because it is a larger tip, is I'm going to dip this in the alcohol. Move this over here a little bit. And this is going to give you the big kind of splatters, which I don't want to do too much because I want you to be able to see. So you can see these big splotches. And then it is kind of interacting with the Wink of Stella. It's sparkling, which is kind of cool. It won't do that, obviously, once it's dry. But so you can kind of do as many or as big or as little as you want. Looks pretty good for now. Okay, so I'm going to give this just a sec. Now, what you'll want to do is to let this dry. And if you can, it's best to let it dry somewhere where you can put something on it to keep it flat. So what I'm going to do is grab, I have just a scrap, so I'm going to set this, I'm going to pull this off, and I'm going to see if you can see that a little bit better now with the splotches. So you can see there's a lot of splotches of Stella. It kind of has an overall sheen to it as well. But then these marks here are where the alcohol went and it pushed the color out to the side. So you're never going to get colors that look the same ever, which is kind of cool. So it's always going to be unique. So I'm going to set this over here for a minute. And I'm just putting 2 blocks on it. I'm just going to use these 2 blocks that I already had, just to kind of flatten it out a little bit. So that definitely does help. So another one here that we could do. So those were a different, let's try, oh, clearly I'm boring the dog. So we're going to do dark pumpkin pie. I had dark coral, dark Cajun craze. So that'll be oranges. And then I feel like we need some sort of a bluish. That's light, pretty peacock. Let me put that one back so I don't forget. Dark and light. Let's do a blue. This was Misty Moonlight. So let's try that. And then I feel like we need one more. Let me see if mango. Dark mango. Yeah, so we're going to do these. This will just be a different thing. So the only thing, again, you want to do is just make sure that your brush, if you were painting with it, is clear. That way it doesn't have other colors on it. So same thing again. So what I'm going to do is we'll say pumpkin pie. And no, buddy. Hey. Wait. Jack. Give me just 1 second. Jack. Come. Down or lay down? Sorry about that. So we're going to do dark pumpkin pie. And what I'm going to do with this is let's try and make these in a different shape. So I'll make them a little bit bigger. Instead of a zig, kind of change the shape. So we have dark coral. And again, you can do this with the lights, the light markers, but they don't really give as much of a, I don't want to say they don't give as much of a, it's very washed out because the alcohol is kind of washing out the pigment as it is. That was Cajun Craze. The alcohol kind of washes it out as it is, and this one is mango, dark mango. So you kind of got to watch, I guess, what you do with your light, unless you want, maybe you want a washed out look, which would be okay. And then dark misty moonlight. I'm just going to add a couple. Okay. So, oh, you're sweet, Donna. He doesn't know what the heck's going on. He's still learning the ways of this house. He's only been here for 2 weeks, so he is pretty good with figuring out what's going on. He was very happy last night because I shouldn't say he was. Christian was very happy last night because Jack was sleeping with him in bed until he went out and then went in his crate for the night. But he normally is attached to my ankle, so he doesn't typically stay in bed with Christian unless I'm sitting in the room on the floor or something. So Christian was super happy with that. I told him this morning, I said, he laid with you for 2 hours. And he said, are you kidding me? I said, I could not believe it. He even readjusted himself a few times, realized I wasn't there, and still laid. So that's pretty amazing. All right, so I did Wink of Stella again with that one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move to the other brush just for the heck of it, because maybe you don't have a Wink of Stella pen necessarily. If not, you need to get one because it's really awesome. And the bigger brush obviously gives a bigger spread of your ink. Let's kind of spread this around. I'm trying again. I'm not going into the blue because I don't want to muddy the colors. Make sure this one looks kind of nice here. It's got this little, like that jewel drop look, almost like a geode. All right, so now we'll go into the blue. And now I'm going to try to tap this, that way I'm not muddying it. But it is going to spill into the other ones, and it's really bleeding through, and it looks really, really cool. Right here, this one just bled all the way through, which is kind of cool, so. Oh, that looks really neat. Okay. I'm going to leave that because that's good enough. And I'm going to grab, I'm going to blow just a little bit first. Also, one other thing, I have a weird drop here in the middle because of the way it bled, but also if you blow, like you could do this, I'm sure you've done this before with a straw, but if you blow with a straw, you can actually move the color around a little bit, which is also another cool technique that you can do. But what I'm trying to do is just blow to basically evaporate the alcohol just a little bit before I put the block down. And then instead of, I'm going to sit this one here. Let me grab a small, I just want to make sure they're clean. That way I'm not putting a block with a color on. There we go. So you have that little pearl there. I'm going to just drop a little bit just to, so it kind of spreads out a little bit more evenly. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do, and I know I have a new one of these, so let me just, nope, it's in this one. Grab it. I'm going to grab a spritzer, and I'm going to put some ink into it. Oh, here's my other refill, which I needed. Oh my gosh, I wish some of you guys lived closer. That's all I can say. I have so many crafting supplies that, good Lord, if it wasn't for having to ship them places, I would be so super happy to share them with people. I have so much stuff. It is just truly 100% ridiculously insane. Oh, I thought I had another pack of them, but I guess I didn't. So we're gonna make do. We're gonna make it. And another thing you could use, which Lisa's husband John, I believe, created this. This is the stencil stop, so you probably could hold that. So you can see one thing about this. It did, and I'm gonna pop just this in the center for a second. It did kind of spread the ink out, so it's kind of got just like a center. I don't really want to touch it because I don't want to leave a fingerprint in it, but it's kind of got like a center glob where it's clear, which kind of looks really neat. So you could totally use this as a beachy background. As a matter of fact, it kind of reminds me of that one paper that we have. I'm just going to set this in the center, just like that. You can see we've made a little bit of a green down here, and yeah, so it's kind of an unusual color, but let's see. I think this one has champagne, shimmer mist, and alcohol in it. So what I'm going to do is, even though it has champagne, it doesn't really have anything else in there. Since it's clear, I'm going to pour a little bit of alcohol in it. Oops, just to fill it. You know what I'm finding is that it doesn't pour out of that glass very well. Could probably get into little, what are they called? Little pipettes, if you have them. I have some downstairs with my essential oils, but we'll just fill it from here. It's filling fine. So, little dribbles. It's okay. That's why I always have paper towels and my microfiber cloths in here. All right, so I want to give that a shake just because I kind of want to mix. I know that had 70, the isopropyl in it. It had in that. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to make sure this is, for the most part, kind of dry. So I did notice somebody saying about cleaning your blocks. You can clean them with dish soap. You can also clean them with hand sanitizer, surprisingly enough. So there's lots of different things you can use to clean it with. But if you don't really get it super sticky, that's really the key. A lot of times you can just clean it off with the Stampin' Mist when you clean as well. I do that too sometimes. So I'm going to press this down. And I'm going to make sure this is spritzing. Okay, so my Stampin' Spritzer. Oops, where is it shooting? It's shooting to the side. What the heck? So you can see when you do that, it gives you a totally different look. And I'll bring the other one in a minute. And I want to kind of let this be able to dry, but it gives you like a tiny dot instead of a bigger dot. So I'm going to grab this. 1 second. I want to put this right here. So if you can see that, and I'm just going to give you a flick so you can see the difference. So just hang tight 1 second. So when you do the spritzer, you'll get these tiny little, hold on, I'm going to pull this so you can see it. You'll get these tiny little, almost like a pattern, like a concrete pattern. It's really tiny, tiny dots. When you're doing the flicking, you'll get the bigger drippy dots, if that makes sense. So either of them look pretty cool. So I'm going to bring this one back in because it is dry. So you can see when you do it with the droplets, you get bigger droplets versus when you do the little one, you kind of get like a little soft dotted spray. But they're both really cool. So this definitely needs to dry. So I'm going to sit this one over where I had the first one. So here is this. It's still not 100% dry because I can see some wet spots. One thing to keep in mind with this, you don't want to heat this, okay? And the reason being is this 91% alcohol is extremely flammable. So you don't want to heat this with your heat tool to dry it. You are going to have to let it completely set to dry. So in the meantime, this one I'll say is almost dry. So I'm going to set this on the side and we'll just work on one more. That way we have something else to work on while we wait for that to dry. So let's see. If we have dark Bermuda Bay, and this was Misty Moonlight, I believe. Yep, dark Misty Moonlight. And I'm going to bring in, I don't know how it's going to look, but we'll bring it in so you can see the difference. This is light Misty Moonlight, which does kind of have a different tone on the blends. So that was these three. I'm going to move this off to the side. I'm going to say I'll try to keep an eye on what I'm using, but I can't promise anything just because sometimes I forget. And I'm going to go with also light Bermuda Bay. Okay, so we'll stick with those four. And we'll see if we can kind of make something a little bit watery. So what I'm going to do is same thing with the water painter. Oh, Melon Mambo, that would be pretty. Hold on a second. Do we have that one? Do we have Melon Mambo? What's this one? Oh, we do. I'm going to add a little bit in. You're right. Let's put a little bit of that in. I don't know if you were talking about that for this one, but I do love Melon Mambo. And this one is really pretty. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but we'll see. So I'm just going to pick a color and kind of just softly spread it. This was the light Bermuda Bay. Then dark Bermuda Bay. It is kind of fun though, just in general, being able to find another use for stuff that you may already have. Again, if you're going to swirl or if you're going to wet it and tap, you're going to get a different look depending on what you do. So, you know, it's not going to be the same because maybe the first time you smash it, like flatten it like this, maybe the next time you kind of swirl it, it's going to be different, which is, I think, another thing that's pretty cool about it. I think this was Light Misty Moonlight. So I guess this is our answer to the alcohol inks. I was kind of wondering when someone was going to come up with a way of how we could have alcohol inks since we don't. I mean, I know it's probably just one more things where people are like, oh, that's another thing I have to buy. But it's kind of cool sometimes to be able to have just different mediums to use and work with. I don't know. I also like being able to get more than one thing out of a product. So more than one use out of the same thing. So now I'm going to go into the Melon Mambo. I'm trying not to muddy it. So I'm just very lightly tapping it because I don't want it to... I don't mind if it makes purple but I don't want it to turn to mud color. So that is really pretty. I like the pops of pink in there. And again, the way I did this one, it was much softer of I guess a tap is what you would say. It was much softer of a tap. See if I can find a spot there that's not going to bleed too much. But it was so it gave like a softer overall look to it, as opposed to, remember, we did one yesterday. This one did have also the Evening Evergreen, which is kind of looks almost like a grayish one here. So that's really pretty. So I'm going to just give it a light. It does evaporate pretty quickly. Okay. So one other, I'm going to use a really tiny block in the center to kind of weigh it down. And I want to go back to my good Wink of Stella pen, which is brand new. I'm going to add just another little squirt here. And you kind of want it wet, but I guess not like super dripping, depending. The other thing you could probably do, so this is the good pen, so I am recapping it. You could probably even dip your alcohol into this. That way it's super wet. Get bigger splots. I probably should have really backed my iPad up. So then I'm getting alcohol and shiny spots. I really like these big drips. So many different ways you could do this. Okay, so I'm gonna stop because I don't want to make it too wet. All right, so I just basically at the end am making sure that I'm wiping off whatever brush it is I'm using. So this was the water painter. Again, I did still have the spritzer that had the champagne in there. You could even do, if you were doing really light colors, a cool thing to do would be to, because this one does have a re-inker in it. So if you knew you were going to use one, you could put your alcohol and then put a drop of color in. And say if you had a super subtle background, you could spray like a really dark orange in there with it and make that bleed. That would be another really good idea. So there definitely are a lot of possibilities on what you could do with this. So I'm going to move all of these over for a second. I just want to wipe this up. Get the rest. You can also, one other thing you could do if you wanted to, instead of using your silicone mat where I put that out, you could also put it on your block. Same thing again though, just make sure that you wipe it when you're done with it, just to clean it off. So soap, warm water, you could kind of soak these in your sink and then rinse them afterwards. Another thing some people do, and I've never done this myself because I guess I've never gotten them that dirty. Some people run them through their dishwasher. So they are acrylic, so it's not going to hurt them, which is pretty nice. So let's go back to this one. Okay, so this is the first one we did. I would say it's probably the closest to being dry. I'm going to show you this one is doing a little bit of a curl. Since it's more dry now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take blocks and I'm just going to set them. So I have this on my Big Shot plate. So I'm just going to set the blocks on here to kind of help flatten it out a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to move this over as well. And this one's actually pretty dry. I don't know if it's because I put that one in the center, but considering this one, I meant to say flat. It's pretty flat. So I don't know if it's the way I alcoholed it. So basically, instead of saturating it, I kind of tapped it lightly. But this one is really quite dry. So it's really pretty, though. I like the colors of the pinks and the blues. I'm going to leave that block on there just to kind of hold it flat a little bit. And then we'll use this one. So let me move this. And while I'm at it, I'm going to grab a clean piece of paper. All my paper is, I guess, clean in the terms of relatively speaking. Clean. All right, so let's trim this down. And what I'm going to do really quickly before I cut this is I'm going to just use my paper towel just because I don't want to smear it if possible. And I'm setting this down and I'm just going to press and see if there's anything wet because I felt like that wink of Stella was a little globby. So it did pick up that little spot. But I'm going to trim this down. Oops. So we're going to go to 4. And the part you're trimming off, you could even put that on the inside of something. So if you wanted to put this on the inside of your card, you could. That's another idea. And I'm going to take this part off. So 4 by 5 1/4. The kind of cool part about this is I guess it's endless as to what you could do with it. 5 1/4. Needs a little trim. Endless to the color combinations you could do. It's very versatile. That's one pretty cool thing. All right, so I am going to put some adhesive on the back of this, but I'm going to try to remember this time to also put it in the center. So I'm going to do that part first. Okay. I didn't get to the very edge, but do you want to try if you can, at least on 2 of the sides. And I'm going to roll this over. Roll this one up. Okay, so same thing again. I'm going to do my best to try to put this somewhat centered. Okay, I feel like I still must have just slightly, probably because of the crinkle of it, overcut it, but that's not too bad. I only have this little thin piece right here. So I'm just going to do this again just to make sure I don't have any smudges. I'm just going to give it a nice press. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to trim that little teeny piece off. And let me grab my... I really try not to use my Stampin' Up! Trimmer when I'm doing these little tiny pieces like this, only because sometimes it either gums it or just doesn't cut it the way I like. So I really do. I use this guillotine trimmer a lot. I really like it a lot. I know we used to carry one. I'm guessing that was long before. I was probably a really good customer and just didn't realize I needed a better trimmer. But so if you look at this, like if you pick it up and look and you know where the adhesive is, you can see the adhesive. So I do always try to be honest with you. So I'm not going to say you can't see it, but it's such a pattern that you can't, unless you're actually looking for it, you don't really 100% see it. So what I said was, this was, I think we went with 4 by 5 1/4. I said that I was going to do a different one, but I'm going to save that one. I might have to do that one after the fact. I do have my crocodile, and I'm going to show you just how simple this is. So if you have your croc, and you are going to need your really big stamp for this, because he is pretty large. I don't know if you need this one. I think I could probably put him on here. Yeah, he kind of almost fits. We're going to use that one just for the sake of it. So same thing yesterday. You notice when I did that one thing yesterday, remember I didn't line it up correctly. So when you have your stamp, put it down so it goes where it's supposed to, especially if it's photopolymer, and then pick it up. That way you know it's lined up properly, okay? So this is that ombre paper. I just have a little piece of it, so I figured since I have it, I might as well show you. We'll go with Shaded Spruce. And when you have a really large stamp, it's always best to put the stamp down and ink to the stamp instead. Okay. And since you can see where you want it, we'll kind of put it so it's kind of over here-ish. Let's see, what do we mind? If we don't cut off, he should be able to fit on here somewhere. Yeah, if we miss a little bit of his foot, it's okay. So just make sure when you have a big stamp that you kind of press all over. Okay. It's okay, buddy. Just woke yourself up. It's okay. We're still just here. Nobody here, just you and me. So what you can also do while this is like this is you can take your blender pen, and because the ink is still going to be wet, you could even soften the edge of this. Sit down, Jack. You could soften the edge. That way you don't have such a hard edge, and it kind of also will work to give you a little bit of shading. You can do this as long as you have your blender pen, but if you do it when it's wet, you'll kind of get a little bit nicer of a bleed from it. So the other thing you could do if you wanted to, which would be kind of cool, is you could take your white watercolor pencil and you could color in his teeth if you wanted to. That'll be kind of neat. So if you did that, what you would do is, here it is here. Take your watercolor pencil and you could kind of just whiten up his teeth a little bit. It's not going to be shockingly white, but it is enough that you can tell the difference. So that's kind of cool. You could also do that with some gouache if you wanted to. So just another thing. And then what I did is I didn't do a super duper job of fussy cutting this. So for those of you that are like, there's no way, and you know where I am cutting that thing out, I kind of cut around the edge, but you notice I didn't really cut inside where his scales are. I did do the teeth because I kind of thought that would be more helpful to the image just in general, but I got a little bit close to his snout, but it wasn't nearly super close. So we'll go with that. I'm just going to use the one I already did. I'll recut him for something else later. And when you're finished with your blender pen, one thing to note, you want to make sure that you always wipe it off to make sure it comes out clear, because then you can use it again and again. Only caveat is if you use white ink or black ink. I do have one that is, one end is for white, one is for black, because you can't get, pigment ink is really hard to get out and the black is hard to kind of release the color. So I have one that I use one side for white and one side for black. But aside from that, it does work out really well. So we'll say there's that complementary color on this. Since this was the ombre color, I think, you know what? And now that I think about this, I wonder if, I think I ended up using this with a blending brush, because this is white and the other side of this is a color. So this one I think I just went over with a blending brush in, I bet you this was in Granny Apple, and what was the other one we just had? Peacock. Blended those two together, and that's when I came up with this color. So if you don't want to do that, you could also use ombre paper if you still have some left over. So just as a little tidbit. And just to make this so it's not really matching the color, I'm going to back it onto Bermuda, because it'll kind of pull out some of this color. And so we have that, and I know that was 4 by 5 1/4. We could cut this down a little bit, but let's, I don't know, like I want to, but I don't want to. Now we're going to leave it. But I am going to add a sentiment. We're going to add something else to it. So I'm going to go ahead and score this and cut it in half. So we have that and this and our croc. And we could certainly cut out, oh my gosh, there's so many other things that we could do here. You have your little images of the water, the flower. This is the other one. I did do this a while back too, because this one was really quite easy to do. But you can see I colored this with the blends. So you can kind of put this in the background if you wanted to, like it was back behind him at some point, or put a whole bunch of them. We have another die, and I'm trying to think, it may possibly have already retired, but it was the Tranquil, I can't remember what it was, but it had a lot of really leafy images. That would work really well. And I know we have another one, but I just can't think of what it is straight off the top of my head. But I think I feel like I want to add a little something back there. So I think I'm going to change my mind again. And even though this is really a really light color, I almost feel like it would work super well. I'm going to put a layer of pale papaya, which I know you probably wouldn't have thought of using, but we're going to add that on there. So we're going to cut, I can see I smudged that with something. So we're going to cut this down to 4 by 5 1/4, and then I'm going to trim that other one up just a smidge. 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to cut this down. Let's see if this is 3 and 3. I'm going to cut the side that has the little piece that's not exactly lined up. So 3 3/4 by 5. And we're going to layer this onto here. And the only thing we have to do is add a sentiment. So I'm going to go ahead and put the Croc on dimensionals. It's probably going to, I'm going to use several because he's pretty big. And maybe just a teeny little part on the mouth there because I don't want it to droop. Okay. This dog, I swear, he is funny. He will, I guess most dogs are kind of like that in some way or the other, where they will just sleep anywhere whenever the mood strikes them. All right, I'm going to take my liquid adhesive and add this layer. Now, I did back this again to Whisper White, remember, because it kind of made it stick out a little bit more. Ooh, apparently I need to eat. Sorry about that. So the white really makes the color pop. If you wanted to, you could layer it onto a darker color, but I really don't think you get as much impact from it when you put it on a color. So it pops a lot more. And then I'm just going to put liquid glue here and stick this on. Hopefully I like it, because sometimes I like to turn it around the other way, but it's okay. All right, there's that. We have our Croc. Can always put our little lily here. Let's see what we want to do. We could do Jungle Wishes and Crocodile Kisses. I always like the sending a big smile. It's your birthday. Sending a big smile. We're going to do that. So we'll put it's your birthday. Sending a big smile. Where is it? Here it is. And let me tell you, am I the only ding-dong that didn't realize that the ovals retired too? Because I didn't know that. I thought we lost the stitch shapes. And, oh, here's that other one. Look, I could show you, just since I have it out. If you happen to have this one, I think it was called Tranquil Dies, but you could, and I did this before, you could even cut this out and put, so he was kind of behind there, or you could put it in front of him, just if you wanted to add a little something else to it. I still have this one, so this was a fun die. This could be retired, and maybe I have just been asleep, but anyway, just in case you might happen to have that. But I didn't know that the ovals retired, and I feel like such a moron because I guess because I didn't know. So here I am, like, using the ovals. Nope. Don't have the ovals either, Rachel. They're gone. So I'm looking for It's Your Birthday. And I'm going to do, guess I'll do a circle, since we at least have circles. We'll do that. And let me go up one layer. Yeah, I'm going to do 2. I'm just going to put, you know what I should have done? So here, just sensible moment here if you're watching this after the fact. Cut this circle from your papaya and then you could back it. So I'm going to stamp It's Your Birthday. And I'm going to stamp it in Bermuda Bay. And then I'm going to get out another piece of papaya and back it on there. Make sure that looks okay. Back it on there because I should have done that ahead of time, but I didn't. So I'm going to cut this. I don't have to move my little block situation here. So you can see that this orange one in the meantime has dried fully. It is a little curled, but again, we'll glue that down. We won't have any issue with that at all. So I'm going to do this one. And I'm going to cut a piece of the papaya at the same time. And you probably could do it with the scallop, but the scallops are just not my fave. I'm not really sure why. I don't really have anything against scallops. It's just, I don't know. Never really, was really big on the scallop layers. I kind of like I guess I like the straight lines better. I'm going to cut this out. Cut this out. Okay, I'm going to run this through, and then we'll put this together. It's okay, buddy. It's just me. I'm loud. He lifted his head for 5 whole seconds. All right, there's that. And I think I used all I can out of that scrap. But yeah, so anyway, so if I told you something about the ovals, yeah, they're gone. Now I'm wondering if I shouldn't have done that on Bermuda. Let me do that one more time. I'm going to try Bermuda. I feel like it might make it pop a little bit more. And I definitely have a nice scrap piece here. Let's see. Just me, bud. Okay. Yeah, I kind of like that better. I guess you could do like 2. Nah. I like the Bermuda on Bermuda. You could like layer it behind. Let's see. Nah. I don't know. What do you guys think? I feel like I might have to lose the flower. I don't know. I also have done one before where I've had it so the sentiment was in here if it was really tiny, which was kind of cute. So, yeah, we'll see. I'm going to put this up just because why not? Might as well. And makes you wonder what dogs think when we're talking to no one, right? He's probably like, what is wrong? There's nobody here. Who does she keep talking to? What in the world is wrong with her? Let's see. I think I'm going to go with something like that. Yep. And this one's going to go up too, even though I probably should have just made it one, but oh well. C'est la vie. All right, I'm going to pull these off. We'll decide what we're going to do with our little flower here, if I'm going to add it after the fact. But again, I think the star here was the alcohol, since I got the appropriate percentage alcohol. And then let me just tell you where I went with this one. So some of you might be thinking the same thing. Could you use grain alcohol? Not that I have it, because we have lots of other alcohol, but we don't have grain alcohol here. But could I have used grain alcohol? I mean, is that a possibility? Right? Because that would probably be cheaper to get for a larger bottle than this craft alcohol, right? So then I was just wondering, I'm like, maybe I should have just gotten that. So next thing you know, you're going to see me crafting with alcohol. I know many years ago I talked about doing stamping after dark, and I kind of just kept forgetting about it, and then Christian got bigger, and then he doesn't want to sleep if I'm up here crafting. Right? Used to keep the radio on. That's cute. That's cute. I know lots of people that say their dog likes to watch Animal Planet, which is kind of funny, but... So, you're going to see me crafting with grain alcohol. I promise, I don't think I could drink it, so you don't have to worry about me falling over the edge with that. But, all right, while I'm here, what I'm going to do, just because I feel like I want to do this just so I at least get it done. I'm going to glue these two down to a white panel. And that way I will have them a little bit more ready to be able to do something with them. Try to see if I can find the edge. I think this piece is a little bit bigger, so. Ooh, what the heck? How did I cut this one? This one's crazy. This is going to need a whole nother piece down here of adhesive. So at least it's glued down. I know it's hanging over, but that's okay. That one turned out super pretty. That one's really, really nice. I like that one a lot. And let me do my other piece. Red, white, something on the rocks. Cindy, that is hilarious. I love that. That is beautiful. Oh, that's funny. See, we haven't crafted with alcohol here in a while since we've been on the COVID jig, and nobody's been able to go anywhere near anybody. We haven't had any fun crafting. I miss all my crafting club. It's been entirely too long. We're gonna have to figure something out soon now that most everybody's had their shots and vaccines and whatnot, and the restrictions are being lifted a little bit. This one I went over with slightly too, but that's okay. I kind of think I'd rather have it over than have had it too small, which I know some of these, this one probably needs a little bit more right here. I'm gonna see if I can, you know what? I'm gonna do it with this since it has some other adhesive. I'm just gonna hold this for a second. But you definitely, you'd be hard pressed to get this to stick without using something else first in addition to the liquid glue, just because of the curl of it. But there are the other two, and these are definitely worlds apart because these oranges, and then we have the blue. That Mambo was a huge, smart idea. And the other thing I forgot was I need to put sending a big smile, which I could have put that one in there somehow. I don't know if you could stamp onto that, how fast it would dry or not, but I'll put this on the inside of this card eventually when I finish it. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to avoid a sneeze. I feel like I sneezed. You get to meet in person. I'm so jealous. That's so fun. Hey, Amy. Amy's one of my stampers. We haven't seen each other in such a long time. I know you just celebrated one of your daughter's birthdays. I hope she had a good day. At least it was finally probably with some friends and not just with your mom and your sisters, which, hey, at least, you know, you're lucky enough that you have your family with you, which is pretty awesome. But I know probably for kids, it's hard just to have the same people all the time. Like, I just want to see my friends. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, friends are like seashells. You could totally do something of an overlay onto this one. As a matter of fact, this would probably look really, really pretty with cutting this out maybe onto that oh my goodness, what is it called, the pearlescent paper, die cutting it, stamping, die cutting, and then laying this over top would be pretty, or even with vellum would be really nice. I don't know how you would pull that off, but somehow it might work. I still have only used the die. I haven't used any of the other stamps for this stamp set, so have plenty of stuff to do. I think these are really a fun start with the alcohol inks. And again, look, we made a bunch of cards. We used a lot of stuff, and this is still pretty much just as full. So I think you really will be able to get a lot of bang for your buck out of this. And since I have this other thing, I'm going to use one just because I can't leave well enough alone. So I'm going to try something really quickly here. I'm going to try. So I have the piece of vellum. And I have the alcohol. Where's my paper towel? Just for the heck of it, I'm going to try this. Let me move this so I don't ruin him. But I have a couple of, oh my goodness, it's pouring. A couple of really, really used up Stampin' Blends. Now, granted, I know that crumb cake isn't going to be the prettiest color, but it's probably the roughest of them. I want to dip this and just see what it does. If it does anything. This one, oh, it's actually kind of putting out some color as opposed to what it was doing before. So I can't say that I could tell you that this is a great idea because I'm just like willy-nilly winging it, but you have to be able to do this with something. My Calypso corals are pretty old. Let me grab my light one. This is it. Yeah, my light Calypso coral is pretty, you can see even like if you do use it here. Let me just try something. And this will be dark. Okay, so I have both of those. I'm willing to sacrifice those because I have to order something. So worst case scenario, I'll get another one. And this was the light. And then since I'm going to dark of the same color, I'll just kind of go over it. Okay, so there was that. Let me wipe this off. Now, I'm gonna try this. I don't know. We'll see. So we have light Calypso coral. I'm not gonna get it too wet, but dipping that in there. It does make it a little bit more watery. And it definitely evaporated really quickly. So you kind of get more of like a watercolor, and it's kind of hard to see. Let me slide this. Get a little bit more of a watercolor kind of look. So let's try the dark. So this was dark Calypso coral. So again, I'm not really like pressing. I'm just kind of sitting it in there for a second and picking up some alcohol. Wow, really, really picks up the pigment, that's for sure. Okay, so that was direct. So that was dark Calypso coral, Stampin' Blend into the alcohol on the paper. This was light Calypso coral. Okay, dipped into the alcohol and then dropped. And then what I did is when this was still a little bit wet, I just added some dots. I just want to try. I just like to see this. I'm going to spread it around just a smidge. It's kind of pretty. Ooh, look at that when you do the direct. Hold on, I'm going to do one more thing. Be aware, girl who can't leave anything alone. I'm going to do this one more time. So this is the dark Calypso coral. Just picking up some of the alcohol. I'm going over top of that crumb cake that I did earlier. I don't know if this would make them run out sooner because of the because it's pulling the color, so I don't know. So I'm not suggesting this is a great use. I'm just fooling around. And then I'm going to take the water pen. Oh, look at it blooming, bleeding. It's kind of cool. This would probably only be better if we added some wink of Stella to it. Just going to hold this down in the middle. Hold on one more second, one more thing. Just because it's a little orange, it needs a little blue. All of these that I'm using are definitely, I've had them for a while. So if you look at, for example, this is one of the original Stampin' Blend markers. So I've had this for probably 3 years. And you can tell they have a newer, they changed the logo on it a little bit differently. So this is a new marker. So this one is very old. So something you could try maybe with your older ones. So again, this is the light Bermuda Bay. Look, all those people that decided probably I was done and left are missing all this fun. Oops, I don't know if this will flick or not. No, it's definitely not flickable. Okay, so that's good to know. And again, this was light. All right, that was light. And this one is the dark. Okay, so then So it was light and dark Bermuda Bay, and the other ones were Calypso Coral. I'm going to take one more time my aqua painter and just bleed this a little bit. Trying not to go to the orange and the Bermuda because it will definitely make a muddy color. So I'm trying to really kind of keep it to itself. All right, so give that 1 second. So again, this one has a lot more pigment, but we also kind of ink directly from the blend into the alcohol onto the paper. So I'm just going to drop one more time. So, pretty cool. Got a lot of, and I don't want to lift it because it's harder for you to see, but you got a lot of more of like that geode pigment look as opposed to a couple of the other ones we did. So again, this one is getting a little bit more of the collections of ink, probably because it has a higher ink saturation since we went directly from the blends to this. So it does look really cool. I'm going to get a teeny block and put it in the center because this is just a good tip. If you have the little skinny block, so either G or the really, really small block, and you kind of stand it right in the center, it kind of tends to flatten out the whole thing because that's how I got this one to be so flat without really much adhesive. So a couple other things at least you could try, but putting either that block, the little one, or these. So that was G or A. So if you have that one, or you could put this one in the center, and it kind of tends to flatten it out a little bit. So, hey, it's worth a shot, right? So I'm going to put this one just because it was a little skinnier since I have that one. And then the ends did seem to kind of flatten out nicely. So I hope you guys enjoyed this today. This was really fun. It's definitely much more fun when you have the correct alcohol. So again, to do this, you do need 91 or higher. So you probably could get it at a craft store. Again, I just ran into the drugstore around here because I didn't feel like going. Not like town is that far, and that's even the worst part. So take the blend and put it on paper. Yeah, good idea. No problem. Hey, I'm here for you. Let me check. I have, well, I'm going to try it on just because I don't want to get out a whole piece. I have this little scrap that I did a lot of die cutting. So this was the dark Calypso Coral. So it's pretty dark. And where's my light? Here's the light. Granted, oh, remember, one thing just to remember, these were really old. Okay, so they're kind of, but they're still pretty good. I mean, I don't notice any difference in them because I would still use them for the same thing. So here is the light Bermuda Bay. And the dark Bermuda Bay. And the dark Bermuda Bay has always been pretty dark, in my opinion. Let me see. I usually go dark and then add light. Let me see if I can just blend this a little bit on the line. With the light and the dark. And same with this one. Hold on 1 second. So, there you go. So that's the markers we use. The light Bermuda Bay. Light and dark Calypso Coral. And then light and dark Bermuda Bay. And that was after dipping. And I did just use the brush tip because that's all I used. I didn't check the bullet tip. But they still look like they work. So thank you for suggesting that, Judy. That was a smart idea to see. And it doesn't look like it sucked a lot out of it. So it definitely still has enough color that you could color with it. Again, I tend to stop using the brush tip of these when they get really frayed, only because sometimes the color seems to have, I guess, died out of it. Like, for example, that crumb cake one that I first used here, it's really frayed, and you can tell the tip of it is so much lighter than the rest of it that it doesn't really color well. However, this, the bullet point does still color fairly well for light. I mean, it is light crumb cakes. It's not really that dark in the first place, but it did still work. So glossy cardstock. You know, you probably could Yupo paper, the only thing about Yupo paper is Yupo paper does not absorb water at all. So Yupo paper would probably be great because the alcohol would be able to move really well. I don't have any Yupo paper, but you know, our BFF Jennifer McGuire, maybe you saw her or Christina Werner, because those are the two ladies that I love to watch as well. They use that quite a lot. I've never gotten it, but I bet you it would be beautiful. And also glossy cardstock, if you still have it, which I wish they would bring that back because they bring it and they take it away. I still have a ton of it. So if you guys do have glossy cardstock, I would love to do that one day for you all because I love coloring, and glossy cardstock and alcohol work really, really well together. So you probably could do that one there too. So maybe we could do that. Maybe we could do it tomorrow because I'm going to try to be live again tomorrow. So how about tomorrow? We'll meet back here with the alcohol since I still have it, the glossy cardstock, and we'll see how that looks. We could do it with the blends. We can do it with the brushes that we used as well. So we'll just do a same thing. We'll do version 3 of alcohol and we'll see what we can get to work. I really miss glossy cardstock. That was one of my favorite things, and they bring it and they bringeth and they taketh away. But I love, that is one of my favorite things to work with because it's really nice to be able to get the colors to move on it. One thing, Mary, with photo paper, sometimes photo paper doesn't have a thick of enough seal. So it's not going to give you the exact same outcome if you had glossy cardstock, because I did try that for a while when we stopped carrying the glossy cardstock because people asked, could we use photo paper instead? And it works okay, but it doesn't seem to be as thick as glossy cardstock. So you can try it. Watercolor paper, here's the only thing, Amy, about that. Watercolor paper is going to absorb it. So you want something that is not able to absorb the ink, which helps it to move better. So for example, vellum does not, if you stamp on vellum, it takes a really, really long time for it to dry. If you use alcohol, which is evaporating the movement out of it, that's why it dries better. So watercolor paper, you would be able to do it, but it's not going to look this way necessarily, unless you probably really saturated it first. So that's why vellum and the glossy cardstock and Yupo paper don't absorb it, so it moves around. Yupo paper, I feel like, and somebody can explain this better if they know, Jennifer McGuire and Christina Werner use it quite often, and Tim Holtz apparently. I don't watch him all that often, but they use Yupo paper. It's like it's not plasticky, but it doesn't absorb it. So if someone knows better how to explain it, absolutely go right ahead. But I'm not 100% sure how to explain it because I don't have it. But I've seen it used many, many times, and it is a really cool paper to use. So it's a coating. Thanks, Brene. That's perfect. That's probably the best way to explain it. It has a coating on it, so it doesn't absorb. It just, the thing sits on top of it. So that's probably better how to explain it. But so tomorrow we will meet here, same thing, 9:30 a.m. I know I'm running a little past time here, so this was a long one today. Thanks for sticking with me. But 9:30 a.m. tomorrow we will meet with the glossy cardstock, the alcohol, Stampin' blends. I'm going to leave this out. I'm going to clean up my stamps, but otherwise I'll leave everything out, and that way you can see what these look like tomorrow after they've dried a little bit more. I'm just going to put a couple blocks just to flatten this one piece out, and we'll see what we can make from there as well. This is pretty much mostly dry, which is great. So thank you guys very much for joining me again. I truly appreciate it. Stampin' Up! Is having a free shipping coming up on the 24th. If you spend $50 or more before tax and shipping, or before tax, I should say, they will ship it for free. So if you'd like to get anything, I would suggest if you have a bigger order, you might as well wait until then. I certainly wouldn't buy it now. Wait until then. And I think that's all I have for now. So I will see you guys tomorrow at 9:30. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.